While my wife was on a business trip, our kids and I decided to surprise her by flying to see her. But when we walked into her room, my wife was on the bed with her boss, kissing and cuddling. My son held my hand and what happened next makes them turn pale. We walked out without them noticing and I recorded them in the act. I sent the video to my lawyer, her boss's wife who owns 95% shares of the company. My name's Marcus Hale, I'm 42 years old, and I'm about to tell you the story of how I became the proud owner of the dumbest idea in the history of marriage. But let's rewind a bit, because every disaster story needs proper context, and this one starts on a Thursday morning that felt completely ordinary until it absolutely wasn't. Picture this, me, standing in my kitchen at 7 in the morning, wearing my world's okayest dad t-shirt that my kids got me as a joke 3 Christmases ago, flipping pancakes that were turning out way too crispy because I was distracted by my phone. My wife Lydia had been in Chicago for the past 2 weeks on some big corporate project with her company, and honestly, the house felt weird without her. Not bad weird, just different. Like when you rearrange furniture and keep walking into the coffee table because your muscle memory hasn't caught up yet. My daughter Ruby came bounding down the stairs with the energy of a golden retriever who just discovered tennis balls exist. She's 9 years old, gap-toothed, and has this wild curly hair that refuses to be tamed no matter how many YouTube tutorials I watch. She climbed onto the kitchen stool, swinging her legs back and forth, and hit me with the question that would change everything. "Dad, when's Mommy coming home?" I scraped a pancake off the griddle that looked more like a geography lesson than breakfast. Not sure, kiddo. She's still working on that big project in Chicago. You know how it is, corporate stuff, very important, very boring." Ruby wrinkled her nose in that way kids do when they're processing disappointment but trying not to show it. "But she's been gone forever. I miss her bedtime stories. You do funny voices, but Mom does better sound effects." "Wow, thanks for that crushing review of my parenting skills," I said, sliding the burnt pancake onto a plate. "I'll be sure to work on my explosions and monster growls." That's when my son Eli trudged into the kitchen like a zombie extra from a low-budget horror film. 14 years old, headphones around his neck, phone surgically attached to his hand, and sporting that trademark teenage expression that screams, "I'm too cool to acknowledge that I live here." He grunted something that might have been morning, and collapsed into a chair without making eye contact with either of us, because apparently looking at your family is against some unwritten teenage code I wasn't aware of. "Morning, sunshine," I said, placing a slightly less burnt pancake in front of him. "Your sister was just asking about Mom." Eli grunted again, scrolling through his phone with his thumb moving at speeds that probably violated several laws of physics. I'm pretty sure he could have performed emergency surgery on that screen and not once glanced up at the actual human beings in the room. "Dude, you know eye contact is free, right?" I tried. He shrugged, which in teenage language means literally anything from, "I acknowledge your existence," to, "I'm contemplating the meaninglessness of existence itself," to, "Whatever, old man." Ruby kicked her legs harder. "Can we call Mommy? I want to tell her about my spelling test. I got 100% on Wednesday." "That's awesome, Rubes," I said, genuinely proud. "Yeah, we can try calling her later. She's probably in meetings right now." I glanced at my phone. 7:15 in the morning. Lydia would definitely be up by now, probably sipping her third coffee and reviewing spreadsheets or whatever it is that corporate consultants do before breakfast. I made a mental note to call her during my lunch break. Then, as I was pouring orange juice and trying not to think about how quiet the house had been without Lydia's laugh echoing through it, something clicked in my brain. And by clicked, I mean a spectacularly terrible idea formed with the kind of confidence that only a man who's been married for 17 years and thinks he knows everything could possess. "Hey," I said, probably grinning like an idiot. "Why don't we go surprise Mom in Chicago this weekend?" Ruby's eyes went so wide I thought they might actually pop out of her head like a cartoon character. She gasped with the kind of dramatic flair that suggested she'd just been offered a pet unicorn, a lifetime supply of ice cream, and tickets to meet her favorite pop star all at once. Really? Really? Can we, Dad? Can we actually do that? Eli looked up from his phone for approximately 2 seconds, which was basically the equivalent of a standing ovation in teenage communication. He shrugged and said, "Cool, I guess." My heart swelled with paternal pride. That's teenage for. I love you, Dad, and this idea brings me joy even though I'd rather die than express genuine emotion in front of you. I'm fluent in teenager at this point. It's like learning a foreign language, except the grammar rules change every week and all the vocabulary sounds like grunting. Yeah, why not? I said, already mentally calculating if I could pull this off. We'll fly out Friday, surprise her at her hotel, have a fun weekend in Chicago. Deep dish pizza, Navy Pier, maybe that bean thing everyone takes pictures of. It'll be great. Ruby literally squealed and started bouncing on her stool so hard I worried she might achieve liftoff. This is the best day ever. Can I make a surprise sign? Can I pack my pink suitcase? Can we bring Mr. Whiskers? Mr. Whiskers is her stuffed cat, by the way. He's been to more places than most adults I know. Yes to the sign, yes to the suitcase, and Mr. Whiskers can definitely come, I said, already pulling out my laptop. Eli, you good with this? Another shrug. As long as there's Wi-Fi on the plane. And the hotel. And basically everywhere. My snap streak can't die, Dad. People depend on me. Right, because your friends absolutely can't survive 48 hours without knowing what you had for lunch. I said, opening a travel website. Got it. Wi-Fi is priority number 1. By noon, I'd accomplished what I thought was a logistical miracle. Flights booked, 2 tickets for the kids, 1 for me, leaving Friday morning. Rental car reserved at O'Hare. Hotel rooms secured at the same place Lydia was staying, because I'd called her assistant Tracy earlier and casually asked which hotel the team was at. Tracy, bless her oblivious heart, gave me the full address and even mentioned which floor the corporate suites were on. Perfect. I sat back in my desk chair, feeling like an absolute genius. Husband of the year material right here. Lydia would open her hotel door, see us standing there, and probably cry happy tears. We'd have an amazing family weekend. The kids would remember this forever. I'd earned so many marriage brownie points I could probably skip anniversary shopping for the next 5 years. My buddy Dave from next door knocked on the door right as I was basking in my own brilliance. He's the kind of neighbor who always needs to borrow something: hedge trimmer, jumper cables, existential advice about his failing fantasy football league. Hey man, you look weirdly happy, Dave said, leaning against my doorframe. What's up? Taking the kids to surprise Lydia in Chicago this weekend, I announced proudly. Dave's eyebrows shot up. Surprise visit? That's either really romantic or really stupid. Can it be both? I laughed. He shrugged. Just saying, man. Surprise visits are a gamble. But hey, you know your wife. I'm sure it'll be fine. Famous last words. We were all set. Friday morning, we'd head to the airport. Ruby had already started packing, which included approximately 40 stuffed animals and 3 different tutus because, what if Mom wants to go somewhere fancy? Eli had packed nothing but was confident he could just wear what I have. For 3 days straight. I'd printed boarding passes, packed snacks, charged all devices, and even rehearsed what I'd say when Lydia opened the door. We were going to give Lydia the shock of her life. And trust me, she'd definitely get one. Just not even remotely close to the kind I was expecting. But that Thursday night, as I tucked Ruby into bed and she whispered, "I can't wait to see Mommy's face," I had no idea I was about to walk straight into the kind of surprise that destroys marriages, tanks careers, and becomes the single greatest mistake-turn-victory of my entire life. Sometimes the universe gives you exactly what you need by showing you exactly what you don't. I just didn't know it yet. Friday morning hit me like a truck full of regret and optimism, which is a weird combination when you think about it. My alarm went off at 4:30 in the morning, a time that should be illegal for anyone who isn't a baker or a serial killer, and I immediately questioned every life choice that had led me to this moment. But then I remembered: surprise trip to Chicago, happy wife, amazing weekend, Father of the Year trophy that definitely exists in my imagination. I dragged myself out of bed and stumbled to Ruby's room first. She was already awake, sitting on her floor surrounded by approximately 75 stuffed animals, trying to decide which ones made the cut for the trip. Her suitcase looked like a toy store had exploded inside it. "Rubes, we talked about this," I said, rubbing my eyes. "You can bring 3 stuffed animals." 3. That's the rule. She looked up at me with those big brown eyes that have gotten her out of trouble since she learned to weaponize cuteness. "But Dad, what if Mr. Whiskers gets lonely? He needs his friends." "It's science." "That's not science, that's emotional manipulation," I said, but I was already caving. "Fine. 5. But that's it, and I'm counting." She squealed and started the impossible task of choosing which 5 of her stuffed friends would make the journey. I left her to it, and headed to Eli's room, where I found him still completely unconscious, face planted into his pillow, snoring like a broken lawn mower. Typical. "Eli. Buddy. Rise and shine," I said, shaking his shoulder. He groaned and pulled his blanket over his head. "It's still nighttime. Nighttime is for sleeping. This is child abuse. It's almost 5 in the morning, and we have a plane to catch. Move it or lose it." He sat up slowly, looking like death warmed over and then put back in the fridge. His hair was sticking up in 17 different directions, and he had pillow lines on his face. "Why did we book such an early flight? Who hurt you?" "Cheaper tickets, and I wanted to get there with plenty of time to surprise Mom," I explained, tossing a pair of jeans at him. "Now get dressed. We leave in 30 minutes. 20 minutes later, we were loading the car in the pre-dawn darkness, and I was running on pure adrenaline and gas station coffee that tasted like regret. Ruby was bouncing around like she'd mainlined espresso, chattering nonstop about all the things she wanted to do in Chicago. Eli was moving in slow motion, looking like a zombie extra who didn't get enough makeup budget. "Can we see the Big Bean, Dad? And go up the tall building? And eat pizza? And see the lake? And—" Yes, all of it," I said, loading the last bag into the trunk. "But first we have to actually get there, which means surviving airport security without losing our minds." I tried calling Lydia before we pulled out of the driveway. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. Her cheerful recorded voice said, "Hi, you've reached Lydia Hale. I can't take your call right now, but leave a message and I'll get back to you." Weird. She was usually up early, especially during big work projects. I glanced at my phone, 5:15. Maybe she was in an early meeting. Or the shower. Or maybe her phone died. Yeah, that was probably it. Probably just busy, I muttered to myself, ignoring the weird little twist in my gut that felt suspiciously like intuition trying to warn me about something. But I'm a dude, and we're professionally trained to ignore our intuition until it's way too late. The drive to the airport was uneventful except for Ruby singing every Disney song ever written and Eli complaining that the car ride was murdering his sleep schedule. We parked in long-term parking, which always feels like abandoning your car in some post-apocalyptic wasteland, and made our way to the terminal. Airport security was its own special kind of hell. Ruby set off the metal detector because she'd hidden a small toy princess in her pocket. For good luck. Eli got randomly selected for additional screening and acted like he was being personally victimized by the TSA, sighing dramatically every 3 seconds. The security guy, whose name tag read Dennis, looked like he'd seen it all and was thoroughly unimpressed by my family's chaos. "Sir, is this your laptop?" Dennis asked, holding up my ancient computer that I'd forgotten to take out of my bag. "Yep, that's mine." "Sorry, first time flying with kids in a while," I lied. We'd flown plenty of times, I was just frazzled. "I can tell," Dennis said in a tone that suggested he deserved a raise. By the time we made it through security, found our gate, and settled into those uncomfortable airport chairs that seem designed to punish the human spine, I was already exhausted, and we hadn't even gotten on the plane yet. I tried calling Lydia again. Voicemail. Again. That weird twist in my gut did a little flip. Dad, can I get a snack? Ruby asked, eyeing a nearby Hudson News like it was Disneyland. Sure, pick something, I said, handing her a $10 bill and watching her skip off with Eli trailing behind her like a sleep-deprived bodyguard. I stared at my phone, fighting the urge to call Lydia a third time. Don't be that guy, Marcus. She's fine. She's working. She's probably in back-to-back meetings. Everything is totally normal. Our flight was called 20 minutes later, and we boarded the plane in that weird shuffle where everyone pretends they have assigned seats, but really we're all just fighting for overhead bin space like civilized animals. We settled into our row, Ruby at the window, me in the middle, because apparently I hate my knees, and Eli on the aisle so he could stretch his abnormally long legs that he'd recently grown and wouldn't shut up about. As the plane taxied down the runway, Ruby pressed her face against the window, watching the ground fall away beneath us. This is so cool! Dad, look! We're flying! We're actually flying! Yes, honey, that's generally what planes do, I said, but I was smiling. Her excitement was contagious. Eli had his headphones on before we even reached cruising altitude, completely checked out from reality. I tried calling Lydia one more time before we had to switch to airplane mode. Voicemail. That gut twist was now doing full gymnastics routines. Once we hit cruising altitude, and the seatbelt sign dinged off, Ruby pulled out a bag of embroidery thread and tiny beads from her backpack. I'm making friendship bracelets for Mommy, she announced proudly. One says best MOM and one says I love you and one says Ruby so she doesn't forget who made them. My heart squeezed. This kid was too pure for this world. That's really sweet, Rubes. Mom's going to love them. The flight attendant came by with her cart, offering drinks and snacks. Ruby got apple juice. Eli took a ginger ale and a bag of peanuts, which he opened, examined with the scrutiny of a food critic, ate one, and then declared, "These taste like poverty." I nearly choked on my coffee. What? Eli, they're airplane peanuts. They all taste like that. Exactly. Poverty. Sadness. The broken dreams of better snacks, he said, dead serious, popping another one in his mouth anyway. The flight attendant, whose name tag read Brenda, was trying not to laugh. Would you like pretzels instead, honey? Pretzels are just poverty in a different shape, but sure, Eli said, taking the pretzels. I looked at Brenda apologetically. I don't know where he gets this from. Teenagers, she said knowingly. I've got 3 at home. You're doing great, Dad. The rest of the flight passed in a blur of Ruby's crafting, Eli's commentary on everything wrong with airplane food and Wi-Fi speeds, and me sitting there imagining the moment Lydia would open her hotel room door. I played it out in my head like a movie scene. She'd gasp. Her eyes would well up with happy tears. She'd hug the kids, kiss me, and tell us this was the best surprise ever. We'd order room service, watch movies together, and spend the whole weekend being the perfect family. I could see it so clearly. The joy on her face. The way she'd laugh and say, "I can't believe you guys did this." The way she'd squeeze me and whisper, "Thank you for being the best husband." Yeah. That's exactly how I thought it would go. Spoiler alert, not a single tear of joy was shed that night. But plenty of other kinds of tears would flow, along with careers, bank accounts, and one spectacularly messy marriage. As we descended into Chicago and Ruby pressed her face against the window to watch the city come into view, I felt a surge of confidence. This was going to be perfect. This surprise was going to be legendary. The universe must have been laughing its ass off at me. We landed in Chicago around 6 in the evening, which meant we hit O'Hare International Airport right at the peak of Friday rush hour chaos. If you've never experienced O'Hare during rush hour, imagine a zombie apocalypse except everyone's in business casual and fighting over Starbucks instead of brains. It's every bit as terrifying. Ruby was still vibrating with excitement as we deplaned, clutching her backpack full of friendship bracelets like they were the crown jewels. Eli was complaining that the plane Wi-Fi had been criminally slow, and he'd lost his Snapchat streak with someone named KylieXX420, which was apparently a tragedy on par with natural disasters. "Dude, you'll survive," I said, navigating us through the terminal toward baggage claim. "People existed before Snapchat streaks. I know it's hard to believe, but it's true. Yeah, in like the 1800s when you had to send telegrams and ride horses," Eli shot back. "Different times, Dad. Different times." We grabbed our luggage from the carousel. Ruby's pink suitcase covered in unicorn stickers came out first, followed by Eli's black duffel that looked like it had been through a war, and finally my navy blue roller bag that I'd owned since Ruby was born. Then we headed to the rental car shuttle, which was packed with tired travelers who all looked like they'd rather be literally anywhere else. The shuttle driver, a guy who looked about 60 with a thick Chicago accent and a Cubs cap, gave us a once-over. "You folks here for business or pleasure?" "Surprising my wife," I said proudly, like an idiot who had no idea what was coming. "Ah, that's nice," he said. "Surprises are good. Usually." That usually should have been a red flag the size of Texas, but I was too busy wrangling my kids and our luggage to pay attention to cosmic warnings delivered by shuttle drivers. The rental car place was its own special nightmare. The guy behind the counter, whose name tag said Brett, and who looked like he'd given up on life around 10 years ago, typed on his computer with the speed of continental drift. "So you've got a reservation for a mid-sized sedan," Brett said in a monotone that suggested he'd rather be doing literally anything else. "Yep, that's us," I confirmed. "Would you like to upgrade to a full-size for just $20 more per day?" "No thanks, we're good." "Insurance coverage? Roadside assistance? Premium protection package?" "I'm covered through my credit card, so we're all set." Brett looked personally offended that I'd declined his upsell attempts. "Okay. Sign here, and initial here. Keys are in the car. Space B47. Have a nice day." His tone suggested he hoped we'd have anything but a nice day. By the time we loaded into our rental, a silver Toyota Camry that smelled like air freshener and broken dreams, it was almost 7. Traffic out of the airport was a parking lot of misery. Ruby was asking if we were there yet every 45 seconds. Eli was complaining that the car's Bluetooth was trash, and he couldn't stream his music properly. "We literally just got in the car," I said, gripping the steering wheel as some guy in a BMW cut me off without signaling. "Give it like 5 minutes. 5 minutes in traffic is like 5 hours in real time," Eli argued. "Science." "That's not science, that's just you being dramatic." The drive to the hotel took 35 minutes because Chicago traffic apparently subscribes to the philosophy that lanes are suggestions and turn signals are for quitters. I white-knuckled it through downtown, following my GPS while Ruby provided a running commentary on every building we passed, and Eli sulked in the backseat because his music kept cutting out. Finally, we pulled up to the hotel, and I had to take a moment to appreciate just how fancy this place was. The Langston Grand Chicago, because of course Lydia's company would book their executives somewhere that screamed, "We have too much money." The building was all glass and modern architecture, with a covered entrance where a valet in a burgundy uniform immediately approached our rental car like we were royalty. "Good evening, sir. Checking in?" the valet asked, and I could tell he was judging our mid-sized Toyota. Yeah," I said, suddenly feeling very out of place in my jeans and polo shirt. "I'll take care of your vehicle. Just head inside to the front desk." He handed me a ticket, and I herded my kids through the massive revolving doors into the lobby, where my jaw literally dropped. This place didn't just scream luxury, it shouted it through a megaphone while standing on a pile of gold bars. The lobby was like something out of a movie about rich people who have problems that aren't actually problems. A chandelier hung from the ceiling that was so massive and sparkly it could probably be seen from space. The thing had more crystals than a New Age bookstore and looked like it cost more than my house. The floors were polished marble, The kind of marble that's so shiny you can see your reflection and immediately question all your life choices. Leather couches that probably cost $5,000 each were arranged in tasteful clusters. There was even a piano in the corner where some guy in a tuxedo was playing jazz music like this was a fancy movie scene. I looked down at my Walmart sneakers, the ones I'd bought on sale for $29, and suddenly felt like I'd wandered onto the set of a movie I wasn't cast in. Ruby's eyes were huge. "Dad, this place is so fancy. Does Mommy really stay here?" "Apparently her company has good taste," I said, approaching the front desk where a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine was typing on a computer. She had that perfect professional smile that probably took years to master, friendly but not too friendly, helpful but slightly intimidating. Her name tag read Marissa, and her navy blue suit probably cost more than my car payment. She looked at my Walmart shoes with an expression that I can only describe as polite judgment. "Good evening, welcome to the Langston Grand. How may I help you?" Marissa's voice was smooth and professional, like a customer service robot that had been programmed with just the right amount of humanity. "Hi, yeah," I said, leaning against the marble counter that was cold enough to store meat. "My wife, Lydia Hale, is staying here. We're here to surprise her. It's a whole family thing. These are our kids." I gestured to Ruby, who waved enthusiastically, and Eli, who was on his phone. Marissa's professional smile didn't waver as she typed something into her computer. "Oh, how lovely! Let me just pull up her reservation." Click, click, click went her perfectly manicured nails on the keyboard. "Ah, yes, Mrs. Lydia Hale. Room 1112. Perfect. That's her," I said, feeling a surge of excitement. We were so close. Just had to get checked into our own rooms and then boom, surprise time. "Yes, Mrs. Hale checked in on Monday with another guest," Marissa said casually, like she was commenting on the weather. I blinked. "Another guest?" "Yes, her colleague." Marissa glanced at her screen. "A Mr. Barlow. They're here with Barlow and Finch Consulting. They requested one king suite for the duration of their stay." Time did this weird thing where it simultaneously sped up and slowed down. My brain tried to process what she just said while my heart started doing uncomfortable acrobatics in my chest. "One king suite?" I repeated, my voice coming out weird. "Yes, sir. It's our executive suite on the 11th floor. Lovely views of the city." Marissa was still smiling that professional smile, completely oblivious to the fact that she just dropped a bomb on my entire existence. I forced myself to smile through what I can only describe as emotional whiplash. "Ah, right. Must be corporate team bonding. You know how these business trips are. Lots of bonding." "Yeah. Bonding. The kind that happens horizontally in a king-size bed." Ruby tugged on my shirt. "Dad, can we go see Mommy now?" "In a minute, sweetheart," I managed, my throat suddenly dry. Marissa, bless her clueless heart, was already pulling up a new screen. "Would you like to book rooms for your stay as well? We have some lovely adjoining doubles available on the 8th floor." My brain was screaming at me. Red flags were waving so hard they were creating their own wind tunnel. But standing there in that fancy lobby with my kids looking at me with excited faces, I couldn't just fall apart. "Yeah," I heard myself say. "Let's book those rooms." As Marissa processed our reservation, I stood there smiling like everything was fine while internally my world was starting to crack at the foundations. One king suite. With her boss. For a week. Corporate team bonding, I told myself. That's totally normal. Completely innocent. There's definitely a reasonable explanation. My gut laughed bitterly at my denial. Marissa handed me 2 key cards for our rooms on the 8th floor with that same polished smile that suggested she had no idea she just detonated a nuclear bomb in my marriage. "You're all set, Mr. Hale. Rooms 814 and 816. They're adjoining, so you can open the connecting door between them. The elevators are just past the piano. Is there anything else I can help you with this evening?" "Nope, we're good. I said, my voice sounding weirdly normal despite the fact that my internal organs were currently staging a revolt. Thanks so much for your help. Enjoy your stay at the Langston Grand, she said cheerfully, already turning her attention to the next guest in line. I grabbed our keycards and wheeled my suitcase toward the elevators, Ruby skipping alongside me and Eli dragging his feet behind us like he was being forced to march through a desert. My mind was racing at about 900 miles per hour, trying to make sense of what Marissa had just told me. One king suite. Lydia and her boss Mr. Barlow. Together. For a week. There had to be an explanation. A reasonable, logical, completely innocent explanation that didn't involve my wife of 17 years doing exactly what my gut was screaming at me she was doing. Maybe they booked it wrong. Maybe it was a mistake in the reservation system. Maybe King Suite meant something different in corporate hotel language. Maybe Mr. Barlow was actually sleeping on the couch, and they were just sharing a suite because it was more cost-effective. Yeah. That made sense. Companies love saving money. This was probably just some budget-conscious decision that sounded way worse than it actually was. My gut called me an idiot. Dad, this hotel is so cool. Ruby was practically spinning in circles as we walked through the lobby. Do you think our rooms have those fancy chocolates on the pillows? Sophia from school went to a fancy hotel once, and she said they had mints that were shaped like swans. I don't know about swan mints, but I bet there's something nice, I said, pressing the elevator call button with more force than necessary. Eli looked up from his phone for half a second. Are we going to see Mom tonight or tomorrow? That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? Tonight, I said, watching the elevator numbers descend. We'll drop our stuff in the rooms, and then we'll go surprise her. The elevator dinged and the doors slid open with that smooth, expensive sound that fancy hotel elevators make. We stepped inside, and I pressed the button for the 8th floor. Ruby immediately started making faces at herself in the mirrored walls. Eli leaned against the corner, scrolling through his phone with his thumbs moving at superhuman speed. And me? I stood there watching the floor numbers light up, one by one, while my brain went into full-scale panic mode. What if there wasn't an innocent explanation? What if my gut was right? What if I walked up to room 1112 and discovered that my wife was actually… No, I couldn't even let myself finish that thought. Not yet. Not until I knew for sure. But what if I did know for sure? What would I do? Burst in screaming? Cry? Throw punches like some dramatic TV show? Stand there silently and let my heart break into a million pieces while my kids watched? The elevator chimed for the 8th floor, and the doors opened into a hallway that was decorated in that modern hotel style. Geometric carpet, dim mood lighting, abstract art on the walls that probably cost thousands of dollars despite looking like something a kindergartner could make. This way, I said, checking the room numbers. 814 and 816 were at the end of the hall, around a corner. I unlocked 814 first, a double room with 2 queen beds, a flat-screen TV that was bigger than the one in my living room at home, and a window overlooking downtown Chicago. The city lights were starting to twinkle against the darkening sky. I call the bed by the window, Ruby announced, immediately launching herself onto the mattress and bouncing like it was a trampoline. Careful, Rubes, hotels charge you if you break stuff, I said, setting down my suitcase. I opened the adjoining door and unlocked 816 for Eli, which was basically identical to the first room. You good in here, bud? Eli walked in, glanced around with the enthusiasm of someone being shown a dentist's office, and shrugged. It's fine. Wi-Fi password? Should be on that card by the TV. Cool. He immediately flopped onto one of the beds and returned his full attention to his phone. I stood in the doorway between the 2 rooms, my hand still on the doorknob, trying to decide what to do next. Part of me wanted to unpack, order room service, watch TV with the kids, and pretend that everything was totally normal. Maybe wait until tomorrow morning to surprise Lydia, after I'd had a full night's sleep and could think more clearly. But the other part of me, the part that had been listening to that gut feeling twist and turn and scream warnings for the past hour, knew that I couldn't wait. I had to know. Right now. Tonight. Okay guys, I'm going to head up to Mom's room really quick, I said, trying to sound casual. Just going to check if she's there and if it's a good time for the surprise. Ruby popped up from where she'd been testing the bed's bounce capacity. Can I come? I want to see her face. Not yet, sweetheart. Let Daddy scout it out first, make sure she's not in a meeting or anything. You know how work trips are, lots of boring adult stuff. She pouted but accepted this explanation. Okay, but come back and get us as soon as she's ready. I want to give her the bracelets. I will, I promise. I looked over at Eli. You're in charge while I'm gone. Don't let your sister jump on the beds too much. Eli gave me a thumbs up without looking away from his screen. Got it. Bed jumping supervision is my specialty. I stepped back into my room, closed the adjoining door most of the way, and stood there for a moment just breathing. My hands were shaking slightly. My heart was doing that thing where it beats too fast, and you become weirdly aware of your own pulse. My mouth felt dry despite the fact that I'd been drinking water all day. This was it. The moment of truth. I was about to go upstairs to room 1112 and either confirm my worst fears or discover that I was a paranoid idiot who'd worked himself into a panic over nothing. I walked to the regular elevator and pressed the call button. The doors opened almost immediately, like the universe was saying, "Yeah, let's get this show on the road." I stepped inside and pressed 11. The doors slid shut, sealing me in with my own thoughts and that stupid smooth jazz playing through the elevator speakers. Who picks the music for hotel elevators? And why is it always the kind of jazz that makes you feel like you're in a noir film where everyone's about to make terrible decisions? As the elevator climbed, I caught my reflection in the mirrored walls. I looked tired. Stressed. Like a man who was about to have his entire world flipped upside down and shaken until everything fell out. Maybe it's nothing, I said to my reflection. My reflection looked back at me like, dude, you know it's not nothing. The elevator chimed for the 9th floor. Then 10th. My palms were actually sweating now, which was ridiculous because I was 42 years old, not some teenager about to ask someone to prom. But my body apparently didn't care about logic or age-appropriate anxiety levels. 11th floor. The doors opened. I stepped out into another geometric carpeted hallway, this one quieter than the 8th floor. Executive suites, Marissa had said. Fewer rooms, more space, more privacy. Perfect for people who wanted to do things they shouldn't be doing without nosy hotel guests wandering past. Room numbers were marked on little brass plaques on the wall. 1101 to 1108 to the left, 1109 to 1116 to the right. I turned right, my feet moving forward even though every survival instinct I had was screaming at me to turn around, get back in that elevator, go back to my kids, order pizza, and pretend this whole trip had never happened. But I couldn't. I had to know. And there it was. 1112. A plain hotel room door that looked exactly like every other door in this hallway, except this one was hiding either my wife doing completely normal work stuff or my wife destroying our entire marriage. I stood there staring at that door like it might suddenly develop a window so I could peek inside without having to actually confront whatever was happening on the other side. My hand reached for the door handle, then dropped back to my side. Then reached again. Then dropped again. You're being ridiculous, I muttered to myself. Just knock. It's your wife. You're allowed to knock on your wife's door. I raised my hand to knock, then paused. What if she was on a work call? What if I interrupted something important and embarrassed her in front of her colleagues? What if... No. Stop. Knock on the damn door. I knocked. 3 solid raps that sounded way too loud in the quiet hallway. Nothing. I waited, listening. Was that movement inside? Music? I couldn't tell. The hotel rooms were probably soundproofed really well. Rich people don't like hearing other rich people doing rich people things. I knocked again, harder this time. Still nothing. But I definitely heard something. Movement. maybe shuffling. Was that laughter? A man's laugh? My heart dropped into my stomach and then kept falling until it hit my feet. That weird gut twist had now evolved into full-body alarm bells. I tried the door handle. Locked, obviously. Of course it was locked. I stood there like an idiot, hand on a locked door handle, trying to decide what to do next. I could call her. But if she was in there with her boss and they were actually doing something inappropriate, she'd just not answer. Or worse, answer and lie about where she was. I could walk away. Go back downstairs, grab the kids, check out of the hotel, fly home, and pretend this never happened. Live in blissful ignorance until what? Until I couldn't ignore it anymore? Then I remembered. Marissa at the front desk. I told her we were surprising Lydia. I could go back down there, explain that my wife wasn't answering the door, asked if they could give me a spare keycard. It was my wife's room, after all. Technically. Sort of. But before I could talk myself out of it or convince myself I was overreacting, I heard it clearly this time: laughter. Definitely laughter. A man's deep chuckle followed by a woman's giggle that I would recognize anywhere because I'd been hearing it for 17 years. Lydia's laugh. My wife was in that room, laughing with another man, in a king's suite they were sharing, at 7:30 on a Friday night. I stood there frozen, my hand still on the door handle, and that's when I heard something else. Music. Smooth jazz. The romantic kind. The kind people play when they want to set a mood. And that's when I knew. I didn't need to see inside that room. I didn't need to open that door. My gut had been right all along, screaming at me since Marissa had mentioned one king's suite, and I'd been too stupid or too scared to listen. But now I was listening. And I was going back downstairs to that front desk, and I was getting a key card to that room, and I was going to see for myself exactly what my wife and Mr. Barlow were bonding over. Because if I was wrong, I'd apologize and we'd laugh about it later. And if I was right? Well, then this surprise trip was about to become a whole different kind of surprise. I took the elevator back down to the lobby with my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. The smooth jazz playing through the speakers now sounded like a soundtrack to my impending mental breakdown. Some saxophone was wailing away like it knew exactly what kind of evening I was about to have, and honestly, screw that saxophone. The lobby was busier now, people checking in, heading out to dinner, living their normal lives where their spouses weren't currently betraying them 11 floors above. I approached the front desk where Marissa was still stationed, still looking professionally perfect, still completely oblivious to the fact that she'd already ruined my life once tonight. "Hi again," I said, and my voice sounded weirdly steady considering my insides felt like they'd been thrown in a blender. "Sorry to bother you, but I went up to my wife's room and she's not answering. I think she might be asleep or in the shower or something. Is there any way I could get a spare key card? I'd love to surprise her." Marissa's professional smile flickered for just a second. "Oh, well, normally we can't give out key cards to rooms that aren't under your name for security reasons." "I totally understand," I said, and then I did something I'm not proud of, but desperate times call for desperate measures. I pulled out my wallet and showed her my driver's license. "Look, same last name. Marcus Hale, Lydia Hale. We're married. These are our kids." I gestured vaguely in the direction where I'd left Ruby and Eli upstairs. "I flew all the way from home to surprise her. It's our anniversary weekend." That was a complete lie. Our anniversary was in March. But Marissa didn't know that. She hesitated, looking at my license, then at her computer screen, then back at me. I could see her doing the mental calculation of whether helping me was worth potentially breaking hotel policy. "Please," I added, and I must have looked pathetic enough because she sighed. "Okay, but just this once. And technically I'm not supposed to do this." She typed something into her computer, swiped a blank key card through the machine, and handed it to me. "Room 1112. I hope your wife loves the surprise." "Oh, she's going to be surprised all right," I said, taking the key card. "Thank you so much. You're a lifesaver." If she only knew. I rode the elevator back up to 11, and this time I didn't hesitate in the hallway. I walked straight to room 1112 with the keycard clutched in my hand like it was a weapon. My brain had gone into this weird autopilot mode where I wasn't really thinking anymore, just moving forward on pure momentum, and what I can only describe as morbid curiosity mixed with rage. I stood outside the door one more time. Last chance to turn back. Last chance to preserve whatever was left of my ignorance and my marriage. Last chance to not see whatever was happening on the other side of this door. I swiped the keycard. The lock clicked green. I pushed the door open just a crack, maybe 6 inches, just enough to see inside without fully entering, and that's when my entire world collapsed into a bad movie scene that I couldn't pause or rewind or walk out of. The suite was fancy, of course. Executive-level fancy. I could see a living area with a couch, a mini bar, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the Chicago skyline. Mood lighting that was definitely dimmed for romantic purposes. A bottle of wine on the coffee table. 2 glasses. Smooth jazz playing from a Bluetooth speaker. And there, through the open bedroom doorway, on what was very clearly a king-size bed with high thread count sheets that probably cost more than my car payment, was my wife. Lydia. My wife of 17 years. The woman I'd married in a small ceremony at her parents' backyard. The woman who'd held my hand through 2 difficult pregnancies. The woman who knew I liked my coffee with 2 sugars and always bought the creamer I preferred even though she thought it was too sweet. The woman who'd promised to love me in sickness and health, for better or worse, till death do us part. She was in bed with a man who was definitely not me. Mr. Barlow, I presumed. Her boss. Mid-50s, graying at the temples, wearing an expensive-looking dress shirt that was unbuttoned halfway down. He had his arm around her. They were cuddling. Actually cuddling like some rom-com couple having a perfect evening together. Lydia was wearing a silk robe. Burgundy, which I knew for a fact I'd never seen before, which meant she'd bought it specifically for this trip, and she was laughing at something he just said. Her head was on his shoulder. Her hand was on his chest. They looked comfortable. Familiar. Like this wasn't the first time they'd done this. They were kissing. Not like a peck. Like a full-on, romantic, passionate kiss that made my stomach turn inside out. She made this little giggle sound that I recognized because that's the sound she used to make when we first started dating, back when everything was new and exciting. It wasn't just betrayal, it was grossly cinematic. Like someone had written a script for husband catches wife cheating, and cast the most cliché actors possible. There was wine. There was jazz music. There was mood lighting. The man even had his dress socks draped over the lamp like some pretentious film school student's idea of romance. His socks. On the lamp. Who does that? What kind of monster puts their socks on a lamp? I stood there frozen in the doorway, staring at this scene that was simultaneously destroying my marriage and offending my basic sense of interior decorating, and I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. This was real. This was actually happening. My wife was cheating on me. In a fancy hotel. With her boss. With terrible sock placement. I don't know how long I stood there. Probably only seconds, but it felt like hours. Before I heard a small voice behind me. Dad? I turned around and my heart, which I thought couldn't possibly break any more than it already had, shattered into approximately 10 million more pieces. Eli was standing in the hallway, looking confused. He must have followed me up because he was worried or bored or just being a nosy teenager. His eyes moved from me to the crack in the door, and I saw the exact moment he processed what he was seeing. His face went through about 15 different emotions in 3 seconds. Confusion, realization, shock, hurt, anger. Dad, he said again, quieter this time. Is she? He couldn't finish the sentence. Neither could I. Yeah, buddy. I managed to say, my throat feeling like I'd swallowed broken glass. Yeah, she is. He walked up beside me, And we both stood there looking through that 6-inch crack in the door at the woman who was supposed to be the center of our family, watching her be intimate with someone who wasn't her husband, wasn't the father of her children, wasn't part of our family at all. Eli's voice was small and broken when he spoke. "Is Mom wrestling?" Under any other circumstances, I would have laughed at that. The innocent question of a kid trying to make sense of something his brain couldn't quite process. But right now, standing in this hallway watching my marriage end in real time, I couldn't laugh. "Yeah, buddy," I said, putting my arm around his shoulders. "Emotional wrestling. And it looks like she's losing." He leaned into me slightly, and I felt him squeeze my hand. That small gesture, my teenage son who never showed physical affection, who thought hugs were uncool and emotions were for kids, holding my hand in a hotel hallway while we watched his mother destroy our family, that broke me in a way that seeing Lydia with another man hadn't quite managed. But here's the thing about being broken: sometimes it clears your head. Sometimes it burns away all the confusion and doubt and replaces it with crystal clear purpose. I pulled out my phone with my free hand, careful not to let go of Eli, and I opened the camera. My hands were surprisingly steady. I pressed record. Through the crack in the door, I captured 15 seconds of footage. Lydia and Mr. Barlow kissing. Cuddling. Her laughing at something he said. His hand on her waist. Her hand on his face. The wine glasses. The mood lighting. The stupid socks on the lamp. 15 seconds of evidence that would change everything. I stopped recording and looked at the video. Crystal clear. Well lit. No question about what was happening. It was perfect in the worst possible way. Eli was still standing next to me, still holding my hand, staring at the floor now like he couldn't bear to look at that door anymore. "Come on, bud," I said quietly, backing away from the door and letting it click shut. "Let's go back to the room." "Are you going to tell her we saw?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. "But don't worry. She'll find out soon enough that this little romantic getaway is about to become very, very expensive." We walked back to the elevator in silence. Eli still hadn't let go of my hand. As we rode down to the 8th floor, I looked at the video one more time, and something shifted inside me. I wasn't broken anymore. I was angry. Focused. Determined. I opened my text messages and found my lawyer's number. Richard Chen. We'd used him for our wills a few years back, and I'd kept his contact info. I attached the video and typed out a message. "Richard, it's Marcus Hale. Need to discuss divorce proceedings ASAP. Evidence attached. Also, wife's boss is involved. His wife might want to see this too. Do you happen to know Mrs. Cassandra Barlow?" I hit send. Then we went back to the room where Ruby was still making friendship bracelets for a mother who didn't deserve them. Back in room 814, Ruby was sitting cross-legged on her bed surrounded by what looked like a craft store explosion. Embroidery thread in every color imaginable, little plastic beads scattered across the comforter, and approximately 7 friendship bracelets in various stages of completion. She looked up when we walked in, her face lighting up like Christmas morning. "Did you see Mommy? Is she ready for the surprise?" She bounced excitedly, holding up a bracelet that said Best MOM, in purple and pink beads. I looked at that bracelet. At those carefully chosen beads, at the crooked letters that she'd spent an hour making perfect, at the pure love and excitement radiating from my 9-year-old daughter who had no idea that her mother was currently upstairs ruining our family, and I had to swallow hard before I could speak. "Mommy's busy right now, sweetheart," I said, sitting down on the edge of the bed. My voice sounded weirdly normal, like I was commenting on the weather instead of processing the complete implosion of my marriage. "She's got some work stuff to handle." "But it's nighttime," Ruby protested. "Who works at nighttime?" "Adults with terrible priorities," Eli muttered from the doorway before disappearing into his own room through the adjoining door. Ruby looked confused but accepted this explanation with the blind trust that kids have before life teaches them that adults are actually just tall children who lie better. "Okay. Can we surprise her tomorrow morning then? I want to give her the bracelets at breakfast." Can we get pancakes? This hotel probably has really good pancakes. Yeah, Rubes. We'll figure it out tomorrow. I ruffled her hair, fighting the urge to pull her into a hug and never let go. Why don't you get ready for bed? It's been a long day. But Dad, it's only like 8 o'clock, she argued, because apparently bedtime enforcement knows no vacation. Fine, you can stay up until 9. Watch some TV, finish your bracelets, whatever you want. Just brush your teeth and put on pajamas, okay? She nodded enthusiastically and went back to her crafting, already humming some pop song I didn't recognize while stringing beads. I watched her for a moment, this kid who was too innocent and pure for the ugly reality that was about to crash into our lives like a freight train, and I wanted to keep her in this bubble forever where the biggest problem was choosing between purple and pink beads. I walked through the adjoining door into Eli's room. He was lying on his bed, staring at the ceiling, phone face down on his chest. Not scrolling, not texting, not Snapchatting. Just staring. That's how I knew he was really messed up. When a 14-year-old voluntarily puts down his phone, you know something's seriously wrong. Hey, I said, sitting down on the other bed. You okay? Stupid question. Of course he wasn't okay. Neither was I. But what else do you say? Is it my fault? He asked quietly, still not looking at me. Like, did Mom do this because I'm a pain in the ass or because I don't talk to her enough or… Stop. I cut him off immediately. Eli, look at me. He turned his head. His eyes were red. This is not your fault. Not even a little bit. Not even 0.001%. What Mom did has nothing to do with you or Ruby or anything either of you did or didn't do. This is on her and her terrible choices. You understand me? He nodded, but I could tell he didn't quite believe it. That's the thing about betrayal. It makes everyone question themselves, even when they did nothing wrong. What are we going to do? He asked. Honestly? I'm still figuring that out, I admitted. But I promise you, whatever happens, you and Ruby are going to be okay. We're all going to be okay. It might take a while, and it's going to suck for a bit, but we'll get through it. Are you going to tell her we saw? I thought about that. Part of me wanted to march back up to room 1112 right now and kick the door open like some action movie hero and scream at both of them until my voice gave out. Part of me wanted to drag Ruby upstairs and make Lydia explain to her 9-year-old daughter why Mommy was in bed with someone who wasn't Daddy. Part of me wanted to set Mr. Barlow's stupid socks on fire while they were still on the lamp. But the smarter part of me, the part that was already thinking 3 moves ahead like this was some twisted chess game, knew that staying calm and strategic was going to hurt Lydia and her boss way more than any dramatic confrontation could. Not yet, I said. But trust me, she's going to find out real soon that her little Chicago adventure just became very, very expensive. My phone buzzed. Text message from Richard Chen, my lawyer. That was fast. I'd only sent him the video like 10 minutes ago. Marcus. Just watched the video. Holy hell. This is pretty clear-cut evidence of adultery. In a divorce case, this could work heavily in your favor, especially regarding custody and asset division. Also, and this is interesting, I do know Cassandra Barlow. Professionally. We've worked on some business contracts together. She owns 95% of Barlow and Finch Consulting. Her husband is essentially an employee with a fancy title. If she finds out about this, Barlow's career is over. Should I reach out to her? I stared at that text for a solid 30 seconds. Cassandra Barlow owned 95% of the company. The company where Lydia worked. The company that was currently paying for this romantic king's suite getaway. I texted back. Yes. Send her the video. She deserves to know what her husband's doing in hotels on her dime. Richard responded immediately. On it. She's going to be furious. This is going to get messy. Can you meet tomorrow to discuss strategy? Say 10 a.m. at the coffee shop across from the hotel? I'll be there. One more thing, don't confront your wife yet. Let me handle the legal side first. Document everything, but don't engage. I know it's hard, but trust me. No problem. I'm keeping my distance. I set my phone down and leaned back against the headboard. Eli was watching me carefully. What did your lawyer say? He asked. He said we're going to be fine. I told him. And that Mom's boss is about to have a really, really bad day. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number this time. Mr. Hale, this is Cassandra Barlow. Richardson just sent me your video. I've watched it 3 times. Each viewing makes me angrier. I need to meet you tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. The Intelligentsia Coffee on Randolph Street. Don't tell anyone, especially not your wife or my soon-to-be ex-husband. We need to talk strategy before I burn his entire world down. See you then. CB. I showed the text to Eli, whose eyes went wide. Dude, his wife sounds terrifying, he said. Good, I replied. Lydia's about to learn that you don't mess with other people's marriages without consequences. And Mr. Barlow's about to learn that you definitely don't cheat on a woman who owns 95% of your company. I texted Cassandra back. I'll be there. Looking forward to it. Then I texted Richard. Cassandra wants to meet at 9. You still good for 10? Perfect. I'll come by after your meeting with her. This is going to be one hell of a weekend. Sorry you're going through this, but legally speaking, you're in a strong position. Hang in there. I looked over at Eli, who was processing everything with that intense teenage expression that's half confusion, half trying to be mature about it. What are you going to tell Ruby? He asked. Nothing yet, I said. She doesn't need to know the details. As far as she's concerned, we're having a nice weekend in Chicago and Mom's busy with work. We'll figure out the rest later. She's going to be really sad. I know. My throat got tight. But we'll help her through it. That's what families do. Even broken ones? Especially broken ones. We sat there in silence for a minute, just being sad together, and honestly that was more bonding than any surprise trip could have ever accomplished. Sometimes the worst moments bring people closer than the best ones ever could. Ruby's voice came through the adjoining door. Daddy, can we order room service? I want French fries. I looked at Eli. French fries sound good to you. Yeah, he said. And maybe a burger. Emotional trauma makes me hungry. That's the spirit, I said, grabbing the room service menu from the desk. Let's order enough food to feed a small army. Tonight we eat our feelings. Tomorrow we watch careers burn. I walked back into Ruby's room, where she'd finished another bracelet and was testing it on her wrist. She smiled up at me, completely oblivious to the nuclear bomb that was about to detonate in our family. Did you decide about breakfast with Mommy? She asked. I smiled, even though it hurt. Sweetheart, I have a feeling Mommy's going to be too busy for breakfast tomorrow. She's got some very important meetings coming up. The kind that change your whole life. Oh, Ruby said, disappointed but accepting. Well, can we still get pancakes without her? Absolutely, I said. Best pancakes in Chicago, just you, me, and Eli. It'll be perfect. And it would be. Because while Lydia was upstairs making the worst decisions of her life, I was down here with our kids, ordering room service, and setting up dominoes that were about to fall in spectacular fashion. My phone buzzed one more time. Cassandra Barlow again. By the way, I'm filing for divorce Monday morning. I'm also terminating my husband's employment. Effective immediately. Your wife will be let go as well for violation of company ethics policy. Thank you for the evidence. You did me a favor. Sleep well, Mr. Hale. Tomorrow we make them regret everything. I smiled for real this time. Oh, I'll sleep just fine, Mrs. Barlow. I texted back. Sweet dreams. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that stupid burgundy robe and those socks on the lamp, and my brain would jolt me awake like it was trying to protect me from nightmares that had already come true. Around 3 in the morning, I gave up on sleep entirely and just lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to Ruby's soft snoring from the other bed and mentally preparing myself for my 9 o'clock meeting with Cassandra Barlow. By 8:15, I was showered, dressed, and drinking the world's saddest hotel room coffee from one of those tiny pots that makes approximately 3 sips of coffee-flavored disappointment. Ruby was still asleep, curled up with Mr. Whiskers and about 4 other stuffed animals. Eli was awake in his room. I could hear him moving around. But he hadn't come through the adjoining door yet, which meant he was probably dealing with his own emotional crisis in typical teenage fashion, silently and alone. I knocked softly on his door. "Hey bud, I'm heading out for a meeting. You good to watch Ruby for an hour?" The door opened. Eli looked like he'd slept about as well as I had, which is to say not at all. "Yeah, I got her." "Are you meeting with that lady? The boss's wife?" "Yep. Cassandra Barlow. She's going to help me figure out next steps. Tell her to destroy him," Eli said with surprising venom for someone who usually couldn't be bothered to have strong opinions about anything except Wi-Fi speeds. "Oh, I have a feeling she's already got that covered," I said. "Order room service for breakfast if Ruby wakes up. Get whatever you guys want. I'll be back in an hour." The Intelligentsia Coffee on Randolph Street was a 10-minute walk from the hotel, and I was grateful for the cold Chicago morning air that helped clear my head. The city was already buzzing with Saturday morning activity, tourists taking photos, locals walking dogs, joggers who apparently enjoyed suffering voluntarily. I walked past all of them feeling like I was in some alternate dimension where everyone else got to have normal lives while mine was currently being dismantled piece by piece. The coffee shop was one of those trendy places with exposed brick walls, Edison bulbs hanging from the ceiling, and baristas who looked like they'd judge you for ordering anything with more than 2 syllables. I spotted Cassandra Barlow immediately. She was sitting at a corner table, looking exactly like someone who owned 95% of a consulting firm, and wasn't afraid to use that power. Mid-40s, perfectly styled dark hair, wearing a black blazer that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage, and red lipstick so sharp it could probably cut through steel. She had her laptop open and was typing furiously, her fingers moving across the keyboard with the kind of precision that suggested she was either writing very important emails or planning someone's professional destruction. Possibly both. She looked up when I approached, and her smile was the kind that didn't reach her eyes, the smile of someone who was polite by training but furious by circumstance. "Mr. Hale," she said, standing to shake my hand. Her grip was firm, businesslike, the handshake of someone who'd spent years in boardrooms establishing dominance. "Thank you for meeting me. Please sit." I sat down across from her, feeling suddenly very aware that I was wearing a polo shirt from Target, and she looked like she'd stepped out of a Fortune 500 magazine spread. "Coffee?" she asked. "I took the liberty of ordering you an Americano. Richard mentioned you were a straight coffee person. No fancy drinks." "That's perfect, thank you," I said, genuinely impressed that she'd bothered to find out. A barista with a man bun and impressive tattoo sleeves brought over 2 coffees, mine and what looked like a cappuccino for Cassandra. He set them down with that careful precision that baristas use when they've made coffee into an art form, then retreated back behind the counter. Cassandra took a sip of her cappuccino, maintaining eye contact the entire time. It was slightly intimidating, like being evaluated by someone who could see through all your bullshit and was already 3 steps ahead of you. "So," she said, setting down her cup, "I watched your video approximately 7 times last night. Each viewing made me progressively angrier, which is quite an achievement considering I started at rage level 10. By the 7th viewing, I'd invented new levels of fury that don't have names yet." Despite everything, I almost laughed. "Yeah, it's not exactly the kind of content you want to watch on repeat." "My husband," she said, and the way she emphasized husband made it sound like a curse word, "is a special kind of stupid. Cheating on me is one thing, men are predictable creatures when their egos get involved. But doing it with a subordinate employee in a hotel room that the company is paying for, during a business trip that I personally approved? That's not just cheating. That's professional suicide wrapped in arrogance and tied with a bow of catastrophic stupidity. Your husband's sock placement didn't help his case either, I said. Who puts socks on a lamp? That's just offensive interior decorating. Cassandra's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. I noticed that detail. It's very on brand for Kenneth, actually. He's always had terrible taste. I should have known from the moment he suggested we hang inspirational posters in the office bathrooms. We sat there for a moment, two betrayed spouses bonding over our terrible partner's terrible choices, and honestly it was weirdly therapeutic. Here's what I need from you, Cassandra said, pulling out her phone. Send me the full video. The complete 15 seconds. I want it in the highest resolution possible. I'm forwarding it to my lawyer, my accountant, and the head of HR at Barlow and Finch. By noon today, Kenneth will be terminated for breach of ethics, violation of company policy, and gross misconduct. Your wife will be terminated as well for the same reasons. I pulled out my phone and airdropped her the video. Her phone buzzed with the notification. Thank you, she said, watching it one more time with her jaw getting progressively tighter. My company. My reputation. My money paying for this disgusting little affair. And Kenneth actually thought I wouldn't find out. The man is delusional. What about assets? I asked. Assuming you guys are married, he must have some claim to. Prenup. Cassandra cut me off. Ironclad. Written by the best divorce lawyers in Chicago. Kenneth gets exactly what he came into the marriage with, which was approximately $47,000 in student loan debt and an inflated sense of his own importance. Everything else is mine. The company, the house in Lincoln Park, the vacation home in Aspen, the investment portfolio, mine, and mine. That's beautiful, I said sincerely. Isn't it? She smiled that sharp smile again. I'm also freezing his credit cards, his company accounts, and his access to any shared resources. As of approximately 10 minutes ago, Kenneth Barlow is effectively unemployed and broke. My phone buzzed. Text from Richard Chin. Just got the video from Cassandra. She's terrifying and I love it. See you at 10. By the way, she's already started the termination paperwork. Your wife will know by lunch. I showed the text to Cassandra, who nodded approvingly. Richard's one of the best lawyers in Chicago. You're in good hands. Now about your wife. Lydia, I supplied. Lydia, she repeated, testing the name like it tasted bad. She's been with Barlow and Finch for how long? 3 years. She started as a senior consultant and worked her way up to project manager. Cassandra typed something into her laptop. Right. I'm looking at her employee file now. Strong performance reviews, good client feedback, apparently excellent at building relationships. She paused meaningfully on that last part. Unfortunately, building relationships with married executives is a violation of our ethics policy, specifically Section 4.2, which prohibits romantic or sexual relationships between supervisors and their direct reports. It's grounds for immediate termination without severance. So she gets nothing? Correct. No severance package, no references, no exit benefits. Just a termination letter in her company email and a notation in her file that she was let go for ethical violations. That tends to make finding new employment rather difficult in the consulting world. I should have felt bad about that. Should have felt some sympathy for the woman I'd been married to for 17 years, the mother of my children, watching her career implode. But honestly, I felt nothing except a grim satisfaction that her choices were finally catching up to her. Oh, don't thank me, I said when Cassandra started to speak. Just make sure Lydia updates her LinkedIn soon. She's going to need a new job description. Cassandra actually laughed at that, a real laugh, not the polite corporate one. I like you, Marcus. You're handling this with remarkable composure. Most men would be crying or breaking things or trying to fight my husband in a parking lot. Trust me, the night's still young, I said. But I've got 2 kids who need me to keep it together, and falling apart isn't going to help anyone. Besides, watching you dismantle both of their careers is way more satisfying than anything I could do." She raised her cappuccino cup. To revenge served cold and professionally. I clinked my Americano against it. "And to terrible spouses who are about to have very bad days." 2 hours later, after my meeting with Richard Chen, who walked me through divorce proceedings, custody arrangements, and asset division, Cassandra's promised email bomb detonated across Barlow and Finch Consulting's entire staff. My phone buzzed with a forwarded email from Richard. Subject line: Important personnel changes. The email was from Cassandra herself, sent to every employee. Effective immediately, Kenneth Barlow and Lydia Hale have been terminated from Barlow and Finch Consulting for violations of Company Ethics Policy Section 4.2. Any questions should be directed to HR. Professional conduct is not optional at this firm. Short. Professional. Absolutely devastating. I imagined Lydia opening that email in her fancy king's suite, probably still in that burgundy robe, maybe having breakfast with Kenneth while they congratulated themselves on how clever they were. Reading those words, realizing that her career, her reputation, and her income had just evaporated because she couldn't keep her hands to herself. My phone started ringing. "Lydia." I declined the call. It rang again. Declined. Text message: "Marcus, what did you do?" I didn't respond. Another text: "Call me right now." Nope. And another: "This is your fault." I finally replied: "Actually, pretty sure sleeping with your married boss is your fault. I just made sure the right people found out. Have a great weekend." Smiling face with smiling eyes. Then I blocked her number and went back to the hotel, where my kids were waiting. "How'd it go?" Eli asked when I walked in. "Your mom just got fired," I said. "So did her boss. Want to go get deep dish pizza?" Ruby looked up from her coloring book. "Can we see the Big Bean?" "Absolutely," I said. "And Navy Pier. And whatever else you want. Today we're tourists." Because nothing says emotional recovery quite like deep dish pizza and a Ferris wheel. The rest of Saturday was actually pretty great, which felt weird considering my marriage was actively imploding somewhere 11 floors above us. But I had made a decision that morning. I wasn't going to let Lydia's catastrophic life choices ruin this weekend for my kids. They deserved better than watching their dad spiral into depression, while their mom dealt with the consequences of her actions. So we went full tourist mode. We hit Millennium Park and took approximately 400 photos of Ruby making faces at Cloud Gate, the giant reflective bean sculpture that's basically Chicago's version of asking, "You seeing this shit?" We rode the Ferris wheel at Navy Pier, where Eli actually put down his phone for 10 whole minutes to enjoy the view. We ate deep dish pizza at Lou Malnati's that was so good I momentarily forgot that my wife was a cheater, and my life was falling apart. Ruby was having the time of her life, completely oblivious to the drama. She collected postcards from every tourist shop we passed, bought a stuffed animal of the Chicago flag from a street vendor, and insisted on getting matching "I Heart Chicago" t-shirts for everyone, including "Mommy when we see her later." That one hurt, but I bought the shirt anyway. Eli was quieter than usual, but every so often he'd catch my eye and give me this little nod that said, "I got you, Dad." Kid was being mature beyond his years, which made me both proud and sad because 14-year-olds shouldn't have to be the emotional support system for their parents. My phone had been going absolutely nuclear all day. I'd put it on silent after that exchange with Lydia, but I could see the notifications piling up every time I checked the time. By the time we got back to the hotel around 6 in the evening, I had 47 missed calls from Lydia. 23 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize, probably Barlow. 8 missed calls from Lydia's mother, Patricia, who I called Hurricane Patricia, behind her back because she had the uncanny ability to make every situation more dramatic. 67 text messages. 12 voicemails. It was like Christmas morning, except instead of presents it was desperate people realizing their actions had consequences. We got back to our rooms and Ruby immediately collapsed on her bed with her new stuffed Chicago flag. That was the best day ever. Can we go to the aquarium tomorrow? Sure thing, kiddo, I said, even though I had no idea if we'd still be in Chicago tomorrow or if we'd be flying home to deal with the nuclear fallout of the past 24 hours. I'm gonna call Mommy and tell her about the bean, Ruby announced, reaching for the hotel phone. Actually, sweetheart, let's wait on that, I said quickly. Mom's probably still in her meetings. We don't want to interrupt important work stuff. Ruby pouted but accepted this. Fine. Can I order room service again? I want chicken fingers. Go nuts, I said. Order enough for Eli too. I'm going to step into his room for a minute. I walked through the adjoining door and found Eli sitting on his bed, staring at his phone with an expression that suggested he'd just seen something disturbing. What's up? I asked, sitting down next to him. He turned his phone to show me. It was a screenshot from someone's Instagram story, one of Lydia's coworkers apparently, showing the email from Cassandra Barlow about the terminations. Someone had added commentary. Why corporate drama is wild today, popcorn. It's already on social media, Eli said. Mom's getting destroyed in the comments. I looked at the comments section. He wasn't wrong. People were brutal. Imagine throwing away your career for some old dude with sock issues. The audacity of doing this on company time with company money, loudly crying face. His wife owns the company? That's not just stupid, that's advanced stupid. Bet she didn't see that termination letter coming, LMAO. I probably shouldn't have felt satisfied reading internet strangers roasting my wife's terrible decisions, but I'm only human and honestly, they had some valid points. Let people say what they want, I told Eli. Mom made her choices. Now she gets to live with them, including the social media fallout. My phone started ringing again. Lydia. For like the 50th time. You going to answer eventually? Eli asked. Nope, I said, declining the call. I've got nothing to say to her right now. And anything I do say, my lawyer advised me not to say until we've got divorce papers filed. The phone rang again immediately. Different number this time, the one I didn't recognize. That's probably Barlow, I said. Also not answering. What do you think he wants? Probably to yell at me for ruining his life, which is hilarious considering he ruined it himself. Or maybe to beg me not to show his wife the video, which is also hilarious because I already did. Either way, not my problem. The phone stopped ringing and immediately a voicemail notification popped up. Against my better judgment, I put it on speaker so Eli could hear. Mr. Hale, this is Kenneth Barlow. I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. If we could just talk man to man, I'm sure we could work this out. What happened between Lydia and me? It's complicated. These things happen. We're both adults here. I'm sure we can come to some kind of arrangement that doesn't have to involve lawyers or... I deleted the voicemail before he could finish. These things happen? Eli repeated incredulously. Dude just tried to normalize cheating like it's a weather pattern. Yeah, Kenneth's not great at reading the room, I said. Which explains the socks on the lamp. My phone buzzed with a text. Lydia's mother this time. Marcus, I don't know what's going on, but Lydia is hysterical. She says you've destroyed her career and her life. Call me immediately. This family needs to discuss this situation like adults. Patricia. I showed it to Eli, who snorted. Grandma's going to take Mom's side, isn't she? Oh, absolutely, I confirmed. Hurricane Patricia specializes in defending Lydia no matter what she does. I could have video evidence of her robbing a bank and Patricia would be like, well, Marcus, you probably weren't meeting her emotional needs, so really the bank robbery is your fault. Are you going to respond? Nope. Patricia can wait too. Everyone can wait. I'm on vacation with my kids. Another text came through. Lydia again, from a different number. Probably borrowed someone's phone since I'd blocked her original number. You destroyed my life. I stared at that text for a long moment. The audacity. The absolute nerve of this woman to blame me for the consequences of her own actions. I showed it to Eli, What should I say? He thought about it, his teenage brain clearly working through the SAS possibilities. Tell her she destroyed her own life. You just gave it better camera angles. I laughed, a real, genuine laugh that felt good after the past 24 hours of emotional torture. That's actually perfect. I typed back. Nah, you filmed it yourself. I just added a wider audience. Hope Kenneth's worth it. Enjoy unemployment. Thumbs up. Then I blocked that number too. Dad, that's cold, Eli said, but he was grinning. Sometimes cold is appropriate, I replied. Your mom made choices. Adult choices. Now she gets adult consequences. That's how life works. My phone rang again. Patricia. I declined it and texted back. Patricia, Lydia is an adult who made adult decisions. I'm not discussing this with you. If she wants to talk, she can hire a lawyer and we'll talk through them. Otherwise, enjoy your weekend. Patricia responded in approximately 3 seconds. How dare you speak to me that way? I raised that girl. She would never do anything to deserve this kind of treatment. You've always been controlling and now you're being vindictive. I showed Eli the text. See? Exactly as predicted. Somehow this is all my fault for being controlling when I caught my wife in bed with another man. Grandma's kind of delusional, huh? It's a family trait, apparently. I didn't respond to Patricia. There was no point. She'd already decided I was the villain in this story, and nothing I said would change her mind. Some people are so invested in their narrative that evidence becomes irrelevant. Ruby's voice came through the adjoining door. Dad! The room service guy is here. Coming! I called back, grateful for the interruption. We spent the evening eating chicken fingers and watching some animated movie that Ruby picked. My phone continued its seizure of notifications, but I ignored all of it. Lydia Barlow, Patricia, they could all wait. They could all scream into the void for all I cared. Around 9 o'clock, Ruby fell asleep mid-movie, still clutching her Chicago flag stuffed animal. I carried her to her bed and tucked her in, brushing her curly hair out of her face. She looked so peaceful, so innocent, completely untouched by the chaos that was about to reshape our family. We're going to protect her from as much of this as possible, I said quietly to Eli, who'd followed me into the room. Yeah, he agreed. She doesn't need to know all the details. You shouldn't have had to see what you saw either, I told him. I'm sorry you had to be there for that. He shrugged, trying to play it cool, but I could see the hurt in his eyes. It's not your fault, Dad. Mom's the one who should be sorry. She should be. Doesn't mean she will be. We stood there for a moment, watching Ruby sleep, both of us thinking about how much was about to change and how little we could do to stop it. My phone buzzed one more time. Another text from another unknown number. Lydia was really working through her contact list. Marcus, please, we need to talk about this. You're being unreasonable. What happened with Kenneth was a mistake. Can't we work through this? Think about the kids. I read it out loud to Eli, who made a disgusted noise. Think about the kids? He repeated. Maybe she should have thought about us before she got in bed with her boss. Exactly. I typed back. I am thinking about the kids. That's why I'm documenting everything for the custody hearing. Have a great night, Lydia. Try not to cheat on anyone else this weekend. Oh wait, you can't, you're unemployed now. Eli high-fived me. I blocked that number too and finally turned my phone completely off. Tomorrow, I said, we're going to the aquarium. We're going to look at fish. We're going to eat overpriced hot dogs. We're going to be a family, just the three of us. And Lydia can figure out her own mess. Best dad ever, Eli said, and I nearly cried. We went to the aquarium like I'd promised. Ruby pressed her face against every glass tank, narrating the lives of fish like she was David Attenborough's successor. Eli took approximately 300 photos of the beluga whales for his Instagram because apparently marine life was aesthetic now. I ate a $7 hot dog and didn't think about my imploding marriage for almost 4 whole hours. We flew home Monday afternoon. Ruby fell asleep on the plane clutching her Chicago souvenirs. Eli spent the flight listening to music and pretending he wasn't emotionally exhausted. I spent it mentally preparing for whatever fresh hell was waiting for us back home. Spoiler alert, it was Lydia. Tuesday morning, I was making breakfast, actual homemade pancakes this time, not the burnt disasters from last week, when someone started pounding on our front door like they were trying to break it down with their fists. "Dad, someone's trying to murder our door," Eli called from the living room where he was doing online homework. I looked through the peephole, and there she was. Lydia. My wife of 17 years, mother of my children, professional homewrecker, looking like she'd been dragged through hell backwards and then pushed through again for good measure. Her hair was a mess, not the cute messy, "I haven't brushed it in 2 days" messy. Mascara was streaked down her face like she'd been auditioning for a raccoon impersonator role. She was wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt that I recognized as one she'd borrowed from me about 5 years ago and never returned. She looked absolutely miserable. Good. I opened the door. "Lydia. What a surprise." "Oh wait, I'm great at surprises now. Learn from the best." "How could you do this to me, Marcus?" she yelled, loud enough that Mrs. Chin from next door probably heard every word. "How could you destroy my entire life?" I leaned against the doorframe, remarkably calm considering the circumstances. Let me think. You mean record your betrayal? Document you cheating on me with your married boss in a hotel room that your company was paying for? I don't know, Lydia. I guess I'm just goal-oriented like that. Big on following through with projects. You sent that video to his wife. She was practically screaming now. You got me fired. You ruined my career. Actually, you ruined your own career when you decided sleeping with your boss was a good professional development strategy. I just made sure the right people had all the relevant information. Think of me as a helpful consultant. You love consultants. Her face was turning red, that angry flush that used to make me want to calm her down and fix whatever was wrong. Now it just made me tired. I lost everything. My job, my income, my reputation. Do you have any idea what you've done? Oh, I know exactly what I did, I said. I documented evidence of adultery that's going to work heavily in my favor during our divorce proceedings. Speaking of which, I turned back into the house and grabbed the manila envelope I'd left on the entry table specifically for this moment. Divorce papers. Sign at your convenience. Try not to cheat on the pen. I held out the envelope. She stared at it like I just handed her a live snake. You can't be serious, she whispered. Marcus, we've been married 17 years. We have children. We can work through this. What happened with Kenneth was a mistake. A stupid mistake. Can't we go to counseling? Counseling? I raised an eyebrow. Lydia, you weren't confused about whether sleeping with your boss was appropriate. You weren't having an identity crisis. You made a choice. Multiple choices, actually, over what I'm guessing was weeks or months. So no, we're not going to counseling. We're going to divorce court. She started crying harder, those big dramatic sobs that used to make me melt. Now they just felt manipulative. How can you be so cold? Don't you care about our family? I care about our family so much that I'm removing the person who betrayed it, I said. The kids deserve better than a mother who thinks hotel affairs are acceptable behavior. That's when Eli walked into the entryway. He'd clearly been listening to the whole thing. He looked at his mother with an expression that was somehow both disappointed and detached, like he was observing a stranger throwing a tantrum. Mom, he said, his voice flat. Maybe next time use Zoom for your meetings. Way less dramatic. Better for the environment too, no travel costs. Ruby appeared behind him, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She'd been napping on the couch. Mommy? Why are you crying? Lydia looked at our daughter, seemed to pull herself together slightly. Ruby, baby, Daddy's being very mean to Mommy right now. Nope. I cut her off. We're not doing that. Ruby, go back to the living room. Eli, take your sister. I'll be done here in a minute. Eli guided Ruby away, but not before she asked in her innocent 9-year-old voice. Did Mommy finish her work meetings? I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing at the unintentional savagery. Once the kids were out of earshot, I looked back at Lydia. Sign the papers. We'll figure out custody arrangements through lawyers. You can see the kids, obviously, but I'm going for primary custody given the circumstances. You bastard, she hissed. Maybe, I agreed. But I'm a faithful bastard who didn't destroy our family because I couldn't keep it in my pants. Now if you'll excuse me, I have pancakes burning. I closed the door in her face, walked back to the kitchen, and started laughing so hard I had to sit down. Eli poked his head around the corner. Dad? You okay? Yeah. I managed between laughs. Yeah, buddy. I'm actually pretty great. 3 weeks later, the dust settled. Lydia moved in with her sister across town. Cassandra Barlow sued her ex-husband for $50 million in the messiest divorce Chicago had seen all year. The internet loved every minute of it. Kenneth Barlow became a cautionary tale about terrible life choices and even worse sock placement. As for me, I was free. I cooked breakfast with the kids every morning, pancakes that were only slightly burnt. I learned to braid Ruby's hair, badly, but she wore my crooked braids with pride. I helped Eli start a coding club at school, which he claimed was actually pretty cool for something Dad suggested. One night Ruby asked, Daddy, do you miss Mommy? I thought about it honestly. Sometimes. But sometimes missing someone is better than living with them. Eli added, So when are we surprising someone else? I laughed. Next time, let's surprise Grandma. Lower risk, fewer lawsuits. That's how the best-intentioned surprise trip became my greatest comeback story. Because sometimes when life burns your house down, you don't rebuild, you roast marshmallows in the fire and watch everything that hurt you turn to ash.